But another thing, what I understand is another step is the physics in combat, because if you just put all your brutal force in this kind of hit, you just lose all the cinematic force of your sword. So you literally stop the action, and need to restart from zero. And in every manual, you just see is completely fluid, the combat. So yeah, and so you just
yeah. So I mean, you wrote the translations of the yoga swords.
Yeah.
So who doesn't know?
And you pronounce really nice.
Yeah, that's the only Italian word I say. And the other one I'm not allowed to say on this channel. No, but it is a highly sophisticated art, and the word of art already says so much about it. It is not, it is not something, some barbarian, like, a barbarian on steroids just doing Hulk. No, it's a finesse art. Art is always something that you connect with finesse, with precision, with mastery, and not just with, okay, I turn my head off and go in. It's a chess game. And if you read deeply into the manuals, I mean, you don't even need to go that deep. Certain manuals have it written on the first couple pages. Lichtenauer describes it. If you don't know how to grapple, don't pick up a sword. And if you know how grappling works, which is a highly fluent sport or art of combat, because you need to constantly follow and intercept movements, and you have to, go with them in order to counter them. It's a very, very dynamic way of moving. If you understand these concepts, I mean, in wrestling, when people start blocking movements and trying to force movements, that's usually when they lose, because the other person just switches it again up, and then it's over. So if you translate that to the sword fencing becomes something that is much more gentle, and it also much more fluid. So, and some people have an issue with that because they think, oh, but I want to chop my opponent into 2 halves, and I want to quarter him. Yes, exactly. That's what a sword is made for. That's why the edge geometry is what it is. But there are also many misconceptions. You don't just two-part a person, even if you use a lot of force, because the physics are wrong. And much more important is precision and speed. So the reason why these original swords are so light, and new ones should be too, is because you have a long leverage. If you just make a slow movement with the hand, you have already a much faster speed with the tip of the sword. So why do you want to go with strength if you can just
move faster?
Because what is the equation for?
Yeah, 1/2 for speed to mass for speed to what's the name? It's the when you have the 2 in the upper part.
Oh, the English word for that.
Okay, everyone know that, and we wrote in the front. Yeah, the speed it's much more important than mass.
Much more impactful. So if you just put force into it, all you do is you push a little bit. If you go speed into it,
this changes everything. Yeah.
Changes everything, and it's also much harder to conceive for your opponent. So your chance of hitting him are much higher if you just do it with speed. And the force doesn't help you to really overpower your opponent, because if he's good at what he's doing, he's just ignoring it.
Yeah.
and he just lets you run wild. And there's actually, in most manuals, there are special chapters for these cases. In the German manuals, it's called Büffeln. So when a guy is like a wild boar and he just goes in and horns on and full strength. There are entire chapters where they describe how to deal with these people. And the funny thing is that the most simplest techniques to end people in these manuals are the ones for such people.
Well, yeah, absolutely. In Fury, it's the same.
Yeah.
Fury described some of this technique is just, okay, if you're open, it's so...
Sword there.
Yeah. He killed ourselves, probably, yes?
Runs into it. And that should makes us think if we really should, go with these brute forces. And to be really open, when I see swords breaking in HEMA schools all the time, if a sword breaks because it's badly made after, 6-7 years of using and it breaks, okay. But if people break one sword every training session, and yes, there are such HEMA schools that allow themselves to do so, or even if you break a sword in a year, sorry, but no. In that moment, you do not train the historical martial arts, and these schools should not be called HEMA schools.
But the very sad thing about that, and I literally inside, because I make feathers in the start, and this is incredible for me because they really bashing so hard and absolutely without any kind of idea to what's happened next. It's just, I use my total brute force, I just moving your sword, and next time something happened.
Because the dynamic is taken out of it completely. Timing, timing, they're really good at timing. You could say they're doing modern sport fencing, but with two-handed swords, or with the side sword, or whatever it is they use. But it is all for them about timing, and distancing, and trying to not give the opponent the chance to kind of force against it. But where they lack completely of the understanding is what happens if you take the protection off, and if you have only one life. So the idea of I make points so that I win the round, so we go at each other
And just stop the...
and then in the end I have the higher score, is a very... of course, it's a highly competitive idea. It's a sport.
It's a sport, yeah.
It has nothing to do with HEMA, with historical European
martial arts.
It is highly sportified. It cannot be used in a context of what they are written for, these manuals, in a context of life to death situation fighting, because there you don't get a second chance. So if you hit your opponent the first time and you finish him off, it is absolutely outrageous to say, let's have another go, let's see who's now better, because it doesn't, if you think about it, it doesn't matter who is better the second time, it matters who is the best in the first moment.
Yeah, but another thing is, what you say first, I translate the Fury manual, and this is very incredible because all this manual have this training, you won't say that, is you starting with grappling, next put the dagger on the grappling stuff, etc., and you change weapons, but you using like the basics, the first part. And this is incredible because great part of the HEMA school, or I just spoke in Italy, what I see is the guys just, okay, this is a sword. You are ready. That's a sword.
Of course, I can understand that. There's a fun to the sword. Of course, it has this pull where you're like, I want to wield the sword. But the sad thing is, though, most of them don't even use proper swords. It's really fastly made without any heart in it. It's just, there's no soul in them. Like a good sword should have a soul. And they just mass produce them, and then for 120 euros, maybe 200 euros, they buy these swords and break them. So they don't even have this connection to what a sword is and what it stands for and what it could be and what it represents. The story you write with that sword. This is completely gone out of the sport. There's no, it's just a tool. It's not even a tool. It's a consuming item. You just consume it. You just go through one and out, because if it would be just a tool, how many people say, oh, the sword, the feather is just a tool. I'm sorry, I have to disagree, because my tools in my workshop are holy for me, and I treat them, and I hate when they're just being mistreated. This is something that really hurts me. My blacksmithing hammer is my blacksmithing hammer, and if someone makes a notch into it, I'm really angry at them. And the same applies to the sword. A sword is it's a tool, and it should be treated like one, with respect and with care, because in the ideal case, of course today, in today's context, we don't have that anymore, but in the ideal case, this tool has to perform in the moment of when it has to save your life. And if you just, ignore that factor and just go on it, it doesn't have any sense. And I see the appeal of, we start with the sword, we want to get people in, we want to make money with that martial art. It's all fine and good. But I think they lie to their students. It's as straight as it is. Yeah. Because you will never master the sword properly if you don't know how to work your body without it. And you can see it, because in all tournaments, all you see is hacking and slashing. But 90% of the techniques, 99% of the techniques described in manuals are not hacking and slacking. Yeah. They're grappling with the sword, they're binding, they're mutation, they're doublier, they're, upsets. There's all these complex, or much more fluid, much more in contact, in the bind techniques than there are hacking and slashing. In order to be really fair, hacking and slashing are 5 techniques. Yeah. And these are the 5 master strokes. So with the rule sets that they make, with the philosophy that they make about what modern HEMA should be like, and we make competitions and we have to have a gold medal around that, who's the best fencer, they limit themselves to techniques that are so basic in their entire build-up. And Lichtenauer pretty much says, if you know these 5 techniques, these 5 master strokes, you can pretty much beat every one of them if you're really good at it. But of course, there comes the after sentence, the others know them usually too. And then you need all these other repertoire in order to counter this out, in order to play this chess game of who lives and who dies. And this gets completely eradicated. There is no form of that art anymore. Grappling on the sword is forbidden in HEMA tournaments. As soon there is too much of a clinch, they divide them, because the judge can't tell anymore who would get the point and who not. Where I'm like, okay, just let them carry it out on the ground until one is knocked out. I mean, in boxing we're okay with knocking people out, why not in HEMA? Go to the ground play.
But it's not only for that, because it's over, with this kind of rules, of course you force the guys to become very near to the sport fencing. Because if just the point is the important, I just make this quickly jump with a 2-meter sword just for touch your hands. And
not only that, it's also that you completely get a disconnection of so HEMA should not be called HEMA anymore. It should be, I don't know,
sport fencing.
Or long sword sport fencing. I don't know, it's probably a very stupid shortcut if you use the... but HEMA is a lie. That's just what it is. In its context, as it's taught in probably 80% of the schools today, because they are not interested in the martial art, they are interested in going to tournaments and winning tournaments, and that is absolutely legit. I mean, if this is what you want to do, but I go so far and have to say, people that do that and people that win contests, they don't know how to fence with a sword. They know how to make points.
But the beautiful thing is, this is Italian situation, I don't know how is the situation in the other country, is the people usually won the tournament is ex-fencer.
Yes,
easily, because
that's what it's about. It's timing and speed, but it's not anymore variety of techniques, knowing how to move, knowing it's going forward. You can see it, the footwork. I mean, they ignore every footwork that is being taught in historical manuals. Every. It's not true, they use them for the rapier, but they apply the one for the rapier, for a longsword and a messer, and no, it's not how it works. There's written every step, every technique requires a step. That's first rule. Second rule is right technique requires a right step, left technique requires a left technique. This has to do with body mechanics. How do I get the most acceleration out of the blade? How do I position myself the best to the opponent, to his blade and to my blade? It is crucial. This is a crucial factor, and we cannot ignore it because it has been practiced for thousands of years, and these are principles. When people make these short cuts in tournaments to the hands and they get a point for it, or even to the lower body somewhere, these cuts are described in treatises. In German we call them Zecken. And Zecken means something like a little bite, like I give you this, it's a distraction. I give this small cut so that you're distracted, and then I go in and really hit you. And finish you off. So they're just indicators. They're just distractions.
Yeah.
But we give points for it in many HEMA tournaments. Where I'm like, this is not a kill shot. So why do we even bother? And then, of course, if there are some HEMA tournaments rule sets that started to not count them anymore. But I have to say, okay, if you don't count them anymore, you make them completely useless now because people wear so much protection that they don't even feel this kind of cut. So it's not a real distraction, so you can't even utilize it as a tool in order to make a point. So you limit again
in the other direction
that you can use. And with that you lose completely track of what the actual martial art means. And giving people a sword directly in the beginning is maybe fun for them. They have a sword for a short time. Problem is when they encounter other martial artists and they realize they don't know a martial art. HEMA has at the moment a very low, very bad reputation under other proper martial arts. We're talking jiu-jitsu, karate, judo, taekwondo, Muay Thai, boxing, all these stuff. It's painful to say, but they smile about HEMA, and they have a very good reason, because it cannot be that such a high percentage of HEMA practitioners have absolute overweight. When you tell them to make 10 push-ups, they get sweating after 3. And give up after 8. This is not what a martial artist should look like. A martial artist should be healthy, should be fit, physically in shape. Because that's what you need, not in order to have strength to lift heavy weights, no, but to move your body fast and efficiently. And also, there's no other martial art in HEMA on this planet right now, except for sport fencing, that gives you a sword right away in the hand.
Yeah.
If you go in Kung Fu, which has a lot of sword work in it, if you do Kendo, if you go in Eskrima, this is all the Filipino Eskrima. This is all stuff, they use weapons. They don't start with it. They always start with the hand-to-hand combat to really teach you how to get in. And this is something where they say today, but we want to keep the students, we need to have a sword in their hands. Like, no, you need to teach them what to do. You don't pay university money so that the university teaches you and is nice to you. No, so you give them money so they teach you from the ground up. You go to a craftsman master, not that he is kind to you and pets you every day how nice you are. No, you go to one in order for him to teach you what it is. And yes, there are parts that you might not like, but they're crucial to the success of, becoming good, mastering the art. And with martial arts, it's the same. You have to learn from the basics. You have to be able to do push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups, and you have to be able to run for cover.
The footwork.
You have to do footwork. How little footwork work is being done today. And you can see it in the tournaments. It's just limited to, there's no lateral movement. It's just forward and backwards. That's not how fencing looks like. And it's, and grappling, going hand to hand on each other.
This is another really sad thing is, okay, you have the tournament, you have all these rules for restrict, and you were using all this kind of protection, and I can understand that because you need to be safe in any case, etc., etc. But the real problem is when you are in your school with your friends, etc., etc., you work with this kind of stuff. You work with this full protection. No one try to have control on the sword. And and this is absolutely strange because okay, maybe you doesn't find a nice way in the tournament for making a nice rule, and okay, it's a limitation, but that's okay. Yeah, but why in your school you don't do nothing with the daga, with real grappling, all this kind of limitation you doesn't have because you doesn't have the effort of the point or something like that.
Tournament, I don't understand still today. I think I don't know of any HEMA tournament that has grappling as one unit of the tournament. Why not?
Yeah.
Why is there no grappling tournament in the? And I would even go that far and would say I would do it in a way that I would say when a HEMA tournament there is how do you say not a last man standing, but a elimination round of grappling, and only the first 10 people that succeed in the grappling, so the first 10
go in this
score, they are allowed to go into the fencing part of the tournament.
Yeah.
So you eliminate already people out completely safe because grappling is pretty much safe, and you really embrace, you really participate in that martial art.
And for grappling, you can recycling a lot of rules of other kind of tournament because a lot of martial art is just with end.
Exactly. You can even go till the knockout if you want to. I mean, this is something. It's really funny when to show which bad state HEMA actually is right now is very simple. If you look into MMA, every martial art is represented there. Every.
Yeah.
But not HEMA. And I would say not one HEMA practitioner, including me, would survive in the MMA contact.
Yeah, absolutely.
They wouldn't stand the first 5 seconds. And that shows in what bad state. I mean, there is Tai Chi in freaking MMA.
Yeah, almost all the, yeah.
So why not HEMA? And the reason is because people want to play with swords, they don't want to learn how to use it. Because learning how to use it would go through this painful,
process
of getting beaten up by your master for making another 50 push-ups and another 50, and you go home with all your muscles sore. But man, that's the fun in it, and that's the only way how to master it.
And this is what's happening in every other sport.
Every other martial sport, yeah, not just martial art. In every other sport, people train hard. I mean, if you go climbing, these guys are crazy. If you go in any sport you go, it is always you have to train hard and you have to go hard. You cannot just play around. I mean, you can, but then don't call it a certain name. And like you said, the idea is great. Why not working in your own school without the protection is because there's the misconception that you become a better fencer if you train full contact. And that is wrong. Because, like we said before, the sword is a weapon that cancels out power. It dials it down to speed and precision and to knowing how to play the chess game. And they have trained sword fencing for thousands of years without protection. Why do we think, no, they were wrong?
Another beautiful thing is now we have a so incredible technology about weapon, about protection, etc. And man, these other guys all the time writing on the manuscript. They just play with T-shirt and.
And it's you don't need, because we did it in our school. We never used protection, so it was pretty much a no-go. And we would go with people through techniques, very slow. You start slow, you make contact, you go into the bind, you do the technique, and you stop the blade just before your opponent. And if you do that over and over and over and over again, you don't even need to artificially speed up the movement. You don't need to tell your student, like, hey, do it faster, like you need to be faster, you need to be faster. No. If you do repetition, it happens automatically. The people turn into an insane speed. And we did, yes, choreographies where we knew, okay, we do this technique, then this, and then you follow up with that, and blah, blah, blah. So these sword plays that are even described in the manuals sometimes. If your opponent does this, then you do this, and he will answer with this. So these kind of chess games, these walkthroughs, if you train them in, you become insane. You can go full speed with technically with a sharp sword, if you want to, which we of course didn't do, it's way too dangerous, but with blunt swords you can go full speed without any protection, without anyone getting hurt. And sorry, but getting a bruise from time to time or a fractured bone is not hurting.
No, but
part of it.
But sincerely, what's in my experience is every time when I see a very nice fencer and he controls his movement, etc., etc., no one take any kind of hurt on that. No one have some problems, and only when arrive a new guys or one thinking he can control the game but he can't. This is the moment when someone have some problem.
But they want to train this full contact because they think that makes them a better fencer. But the problem is you become sloppy. That's what it is. In grappling and so on, you should go full contact. That's the part where we should go full contact. It's like making the training session after warm-up. You make a time where you do grappling, you teach grappling techniques, and then you're like, now apply it. And then you just go free on it. Full grasp, you know? Yeah, the bruises are included, everything. And let's see who gets the first one down into the submission. And there it is absolutely needed, because you need to get this feel of how does the physical contact happen, how, you know, force around your opponent, how does it hurt when you get, you know, slapped in the face.
Yeah.
With the sword, you never want to be touched from the sword of your opponent, because that means your end in a real fight. So you want to learn the chess game, you want to learn how to avoid these certain movements. And you can only avoid them if you, or learn that, if you play through all the possible scenarios.
Yeah.
And of course, it is only a playthrough, because in a real fight, never everything is in such an ideal case like it is in training. But you have to train your movements into this ideal case, so that in the moment of stress, of pure, you know, my life depends on it, your body can just function in that clean way. Of course, you will still be a bit more sloppy than, you know, your opponent might not react the way you want, but you already played through all scenarios, so your body is just, and you've done that hundreds of times, so your body just reacts, you don't think anymore. And you can see that in the tournaments, that they're constantly tactating. And that's something also the fencing master's right. Don't tactate, it will kill you. Is this like playing around, trying to read out your opponent, which you can only do if you already fenced him for several rounds, and you know kind of his game.
Yeah.
But if you encounter someone the first time, you cannot read him out. So decide for what you want to do first, do it, and then see what happens.
Just do it!
Exactly. Shalabah, just do it. And then that's described. It's like, go in, do something, attack, make a step. That's all you need. Just make a step, open the fight, take control of the fight. And if you do that, your body will naturally just move into it. There's no thinking involved. But for that, you have to train these techniques in hundreds and hundreds of times. It's always nice in that context to quote Bruce Lee, of course, who said, "I
Yeah.
can feel the person who trained 100 techniques one times, or 1,000 techniques one time. I feel the person who practiced one technique 1,000 times." So, and of course, he didn't mean with that you should only learn this one technique, how to punch, because of course, there will always be someone there who is better at that and places it better. No, but train every technique that you train many times. And you can go through a lot of techniques in a very short period and training them often if you just, repeat it over and over again and don't make a break. But this is not done today. They train some techniques, the ones that they need for the competition rule set, and then they put on the armor and they think, now I can fence. But I experienced so often that as soon you counter such people with really clean movements, and it becomes a very funny game, because usually one or two techniques happen to be enough.
Yeah.
And they can go in with as much brute force as they want if you just hold your sword into the right place.
But this is absolutely incredible, because what you say is the repetition, it's important, and this is one of the basics of all the Asian martial arts. And this is nice because it's wrote in a lot of manuscript in European martial art, and no one using in IMA.
And everyone also in martial arts, in Asian martial arts, they all, force people to learn footwork. Footwork that's where you stand on. It has to be solid. And across the board in the entire world, all martial arts trains barefoot.
Yeah.
You go into HEMA school and they all have sport running shoes on.
Because you need to run, of course. Yeah, exactly.
There's no sense in it. If you look into the manuals, a lot of stuff is, usually when it's grappling, it's barefoot, or it is in medieval shoes, which have just a very thin leather. Where you can feel the ground. It's being barefoot. And they all have this ergonomic running shoes, and
No, I don't. This is it's very funny, because now I'm working on another manuscript, and this one is De La Palestra, and he just spoken about grappling, and he have an entire paragraph about footwork. No, it's not only footwork, but how feel the grounds, and this is incredible.
I'm pretty sure, I didn't read that one, but I'm pretty sure that he, correct me if I'm wrong, but that he describes the walking with your toes first.
Yes, of course, this is another important thing.
You don't see that in HEMA. They always do this sport fencing launches, where you jump and you hit with your heel first the ground, and this is in a martial art context, so not in a martial sport, but in a martial art context, highly dangerous, because first of all, if there's something slippery, you don't have control, you will slip. If there's a stone that is, pointy, you will step right into it. Next thing is you stop your movement, because it's this, what does a horse do when it wants to brake?
Yeah.
It pushes down its heels. So you constantly limiting yourself in possibility to change directions. If you look into the animal world, and I'm sorry for people that don't see it that way, but we are animals.
But that's true. It's just true.
We apply to the same rules, and if you look into the entire animal world, there is not one animal that steps onto the ground with the heel first, because there's no buffer. This is this spring loading of that you want to use in order to move fast, to move efficiently. If you look into indigenous people that run around all life long barefoot, or the Kenyan people that run so fast and make the fastest sprinters and Hawaiians, whatever, how they run, it's tip first.
Yeah.
Because you load up this spring and you can go. And how often you see it in HEMA, they just walk on their heels. It's like, no, you should use the anatomy that you have in order to create this efficiency. Don't try it artificially with force. Changing of directions, all these things become
much harder.
So much, not only harder, also much slower. Who claims that he's with his footwork and he steps with the heel first as fast as someone who does it with the toe first lies, to himself a lot, he doesn't observe rightly, or maybe he is just as fast but uses much more energy in order to get there. So they describe these things out of experience, and today it's scientifically, even proven and founded on that. So why do we not utilize these things, these old knowledges, when we already start with fencing? Why do we just take the sword as an object and then try to hit each other in the most brutal way possible? Which is even not that brutal because everyone has so much protection that it doesn't hurt anymore. So.
But this is another strange thing, because it's like the technology have just pumped this stuff, because of course you can do this wrong technique, this brute force in the sword, because you have an incredible steel now, and you can produce and the sword survive. And the other thing is this incredible protection, because the protection for IMA, it's incredible technology now.
It's not even that much of technology. I recently put on some of those protections, and I realized immediately again, why do they even do that to themselves? I mean, the entire movement is plugged into this.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking, so there is a very viable option of protection that is much more that leaves you much more mobile and agile, and that is a historical, well-fitted, properly to the body tailored plate armor. With these, you can make tiger rolls on the ground, and you can make splits, and you can hack yourself, and you can still completely you can overcross your hands onto the sword. With these HEMA gloves today, a proper stand
you can't. Yeah.
It's not possible, and a full-on blown one where you really go all the way around. They always stop somewhere here, because then also the mask is in the way, because the mask is that big, so you can't even do this properly. With a properly tailored armor, you
do that.
All this. So why don't we specify HEMA protection gear as a proper Maximilian
armor stuff?
Why not? Because people, all they want is have something cheap, fast, and without effort. So they want to be sword fencers without training for years. They don't want to have to pay a lot of money for it, but they want to have high protection. Okay, but why don't you train for many years, slowly master the art, and slowly investing in good equipment and get a full armor, and by the time that you're actually good at fencing, you can go into competition with a proper armor and actually fence the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but this is another thing make me crazy, is the idea you using the Gambazon style protection for all. This is another thing. Like, guys,
we have amazing synthetic plastics, polymers today. Why don't we make a Gothic armor out of this polymers?
Yeah.
Would be cheaper, would be much more agile, mobile, and it actually holds up the shocks much better, because it distributes immediately the entire force. You can go with very thin Gambazons underneath. And people just expect, I think, to be very fast on the top. I mean, that's why they go to tournaments. How do you know that you're a good fencer if you don't do full contact? I know it by repetition of how good the movement feels to myself, and how precise I am with it, and how fast. That's how I know if I'm a good fencer. Not if I can beat the same opponent 6 out of 10 times. That doesn't make me a good fencer.
Yeah.
A good fencer would make me beating 20 opponents every time the first time. That makes me a good fencer, not beating 20 with a score. That doesn't make any real sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But another thing I repeat is just the idea of bashing with brutal force, and of course this is another point, because if you want using your sword like an poleaxe, use a poleaxe. That's the point. This is because this is the weapon born to break the armor, and you then don't need to break the armor of the opponent. You need to fencing with him. This is a different thing.
Exactly. And if you want to do armored fighting, then go into half swording or go into take a mace, a hammer, take a polearm, and go with it. But of course, you can't do that because, especially this modern equipment, would not survive a polearm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Not even remotely. I mean, there's a reason why murder strokes are forbidden in HEMA tournaments, which I find super sad because this is one of the fastest techniques to get into.
Yeah.
You move in and you're there, and you just, as I like to say, pummel the shit out of someone. Even though I think the mask would withstand it as long as you don't grab the sword by the blade. And
yeah, absolutely.
But if you do just the pummel launch, I think it would survive it very easily, even multiple. But it's forbidden for good reasons, of course, because if the pommel goes through, this gonna destroy the head.
Yeah, just going.
Right. So this approach of getting fast somewhere, this, I have to disappoint people. You don't learn craft and art, and it's like the people that start a workshop in their garage and they say, I make swords now, and then they try to make swords. And
absolutely, this kind of mentality is very terrible because next you have just buy your equipment, you are the fencer, and okay, probably 1 year you are bored and just
there's no meaning in it anymore. It's just a consume of. It's like playing a video game. And
you buy the video game, you just running on it, and just.
Speedrun, and then but are you really getting good at it? It's why don't you dedicate this hobby fully? So I do this now, and when I'm old, I master it. There's the joy in it, when you feel this, the bar is rising slowly and slowly. You become better, movements become easier, more intuitive, and it becomes playful. That's where the art is, and it's the same. With forging it starts to become fun when you don't have to think about every hammer blow anymore, but your body is just doing it, and suddenly the magic that happens and the material moves, and that should be the same as fencing. It's something your body should just do. It's like dancing, In dancing on the dance floor, a professional dancer or people that are good at dancing, they don't think about, okay, which move do I do next? No, the body just do it, and it looks good, it's fluid, it's efficient, it makes sense. And I think that's how fencing should be taught and approached. It's that we speak of the dance of the sword, and all these stuff. These terms are there. They are as old as the fencing itself. It's like a dance, and it has to become natural, not forced. And all you see in tournaments is that these people think the entire time, they tactate, and it's just forced. It's like, okay, I do this now, but no, that's not how it should be. You should just fall into it.
Yeah, and this is what I say every time is. In this kind of fighting and many movie fighting, it's like the people just want move the sword of the opponent or move the shield of the opponent in the movie. It's not try to kill him.
In HEMA right now, they try to hit each other, but they go very strong with swords still, and it's like,
Yeah, and just stop.
As us as sword makers, we bury our heads and we
just
my sword. I make my swords as good as I can, as possible, and we use steels today they're space steel. If you travel with them in time, they would be called magical swords because you could just pretty much hack through others.
Yes.
But still, they would not survive it if I design them in the way they should be designed. They will not survive it. And that is the sign. If the weapon gives up, a weapon that has been developed over thousands of years, always improved, if that one gives up because of the way you fence, then it's not the weapon, it's the way you fence. And you clearly misuse the sword. So if a feather sword breaks, and today the feather swords out of high-end spring steels that take such a beating, it's incredible. I would almost challenge HEMA people, let yourself make from sword maker feather swords out of mild steel, completely unheat treated, and learn to fence with them without bending or breaking them. If you master that and you still are able to
use properly
and to, you know, like hit your opponent to land a hit, then you know how to fence. As long as thing constantly bends and whatever, maybe you know, people like Regane, please.
Yeah, I did. This is a nice idea.
Bring out the maestro line of feather swords out of mild steel that really force people to learn these old techniques again, how footwork works, body placement, distancing, timing, and you know, it's also written in the treatise, if you find the bind, stay in the bind, because pulling up from the bind exposes you a lot.
Yeah.
It gives the opponent a lot of time, and also you have to hack again and you destroy your sword. Like, find the bind, stay in it, go in binding, duplier, mutier, all these stuff, upsets, and you will. That's how you should fence. And today in HEMA, all you see is
BAM!
Pull up again and make a second hit because they hope if I just. It's not felling a tree. It's when you want to fell a tree, you hack in with the axe and you hack it a second time, and with every blow you hope that the tree gives up more and more. That's not how fencing works. And even in, I have to say, most lumberjacks, people that fell trees and they use axes, so the Canadian guys, their movement looks more agile, more smooth, more controlled than most HEMA people, HEMA competition fencing. Because even also to chop a tree and to swing an axe, you don't need to push into it. You only swing the axe, and in the moment before impact, you let go of the axe, and the axe drives in because of the speed and its weight. The handles for these axes are super thin.
Yeah.
If they would go like this, they would break them really fast. But there goes no strength on this. And this is how sword fencing should be like. It's not about just bashing in and bashing and bashing and hoping that at some moments the opponent's block is too slow or he can't hold it anymore.
And this is nice. This is a very nice nice way to say, because the idea to break the handle of axe, it's probably the same thing happens in HEMA sword. It's exactly that.
It should not break from that. I mean, it can happen from accident, yes. You know, you hit a helmet really hard or something. Okay, but ideally, really not.
And this is very often in the HEMA sports. They literally broke one or two swords for years.
Yes, some are even more. I mean, you see posts where people are like, oh, we trained really hard. I broke 2 swords today again. And that's not a moment where I'm getting proud of these people. This is the moment where I get angry. Because for me, it is okay if they want to do it, but then don't name it for something that is not.
Happened. Yeah.
Don't call it HEMA. Call it sword bashing, and that is totally fine. And this is completely legit. If you want to do that, I'm not holding anyone back of doing sword bashing, but they get people in. People come into this school with a different expectation than what they get there, first of all, and the really people that are really serious about the old art, they are all being pushed away, and that is sad. And I even would make that bold claim that if you would train HEMA in the traditional way, and with the approach of training the art, that still 60-70% of the people that are currently doing HEMA in a completely different way would enjoy that far more, and would actually realize that they become martial artists and not just sword bashers. You would get them too, and I think this is, it can be done as the way it's done right now, but it should not be called HEMA anymore, because it's sport fencing, and sport fencing is not a martial art.
That's it. That's absolutely right. So, man, I'm really incredible proud to be with you today and take this incredible trip, because it's a very trip in. It's a long journey, but it's very nice because I'm incredible surprised how this journey is fluid, because we're starting talking about your apprenticeship in Germany, your travel life, when you start making sword, etc., and we arrive to the modern use of the sword, and this is very incredible, very incredible.
It's nice being here.
Man, thank you too, and to the next interview, guys.